Who's this? Oh, you're an entrepreneur? Oh, you're a real estate investor. Oh, you're trying to learn from those who did it. Well, come into the lab then. Put your white coat on, gloves on, notepad, and let's build, y'all. Real estate experiment. What is happening, y'all? Today, I have the pleasure of having Reed Goossens in the lab with us. And Reed, I didn't even ask you this while we were offline. Where are you dialing in from today?
I'm dialing in from sunny Los Angeles, California.
That's right. That's right. So that's right across the coast. I'm on the other side. But right before we got started, I wanted to, do your due diligence and give you the introduction that you deserve, because you've been able to, first of all, you're a chartered engineer, which my team dug deep a little bit. I always love my engineers because they think a little differently and very strategically. But, you just to put it into context, you are the host of the Investing in the US podcast, which you guys have a deep volume of episodes. And then I looked into it a little deeper. I'm like, hold on, you wrote a book about investing in the US as well, 2 times bestseller. The other one is 10,000 Miles to the American Dream. Without ever, that means that you really had to take your talents overseas. And I'm so curious to find out how you did that, because now you fast forwarded, what I understand is, correct me if I'm wrong, you have more than $500 million worth of multifamily assets under management that you've amassed with your investors as well. And I know that came from very humble beginnings, but again, you have your thought leadership platform. You've been able to come from a long journey. And I'm so humbled to have you in the lab. So first of all, I wanted to welcome you into the lab officially with the introduction that you deserve. How are you doing today, Reed?
Mate, I'm doing so well, and thank you. I'm chuffed. I'm blushing here, listeners. Ruben, you did a very good job. So I'm great to be here in the lab, as you said, and yeah, we can get into the story. And yeah, thank you for the glowing introduction.
Absolutely, well deserved. So listen, Reed, I was just telling you this. We come from a long way. And the question I got to ask you, obviously, when you hear 10,000 Miles to the American Dream, investing in the US, you are coming all the way from Australia. I got to ask you first, before we even unpack this, why the US? Why? What is the opportunity? I know we talk about the American Dream a lot. That, from what I understand, the American Dream was more for Americans living in America, but then at the same time, also those who saw an opportunity that weren't in America to live that dream as well and join for the ride. So what did it mean for you a couple years back for you to come to America? Was it the exact same idea to live the American Dream? Because it seems that you took it a step a little further than just the American Dream. So talk to me about that. What did you see?
So it actually boiled down to 2 things, and it was love for 2 different, a place and a person. So the love for New York City and the love for a girl who's now my wife. So I came here in 2009. I backpacked through New York City. I just spent some time abroad. I fell in love with the city. I thought, I've got to live here at some point in my life. I'd already met this girl, Erica. I was going to see her in Los Angeles on the way home, but it was one stop before, and I fell in love. I fell in love with it. I'd spent some time in London, probably a year and a half prior to that, in 2008. And I just thought, geez, this is an incredible city. I've got to live here at some point. I moved back to Australia in 2010, and I didn't end up getting back here till late 2011, early 2012. And it was I thought, screw it, I'm going to come here. There was a great visa for Australians. If you have a white collar job, you went to university, you got a degree in something. My degree is in structural engineering. If you have a job in the US, I could stay here for 2 years and then keep renewing the visa. So I could move here, I could find the job. I came with no job, but I found one, and I could start chasing this girl. And, as they say, the rest is history from there. So the American Dream, so to speak, wasn't more the American Dream. It was more that I wanted to be an expat living in New York City, and I wanted to chase this girl. And, I thought to myself, I'm going to wake up when I'm 65 years of age. If I don't take this opportunity now, I'm never going to take it, right? I was 26 at the time. And for me, it was I just wanted to scratch that itch. I just wanted to live abroad. And obviously fast forward into what I've built over the last 9 years, which is crazy to say. There's nearly been a decade since I've been here, but it's been a freaking hell of a journey along the way.
Wow. Okay. Now I'm getting the goosebumps because I don't think that you knew this. We didn't go that deep into it, but we have a lot of synergy here, my friend. I was on a TN visa from Canada. So you needed to
Yep.
be in like, STEM. I
Hmm.
still am actually to this day. And my fiance is American, which is kind of funny. We met in school and from New York. So, well, not from New York, but we live in New York. So I'm like, okay, I'm seeing some synergy there. I'm trying to connect the dots. And so I can really relate with that. And because I can relate with that, I want to kind of go back to that foundation because you came in.
Hmm.
What I understand is, engineering was your background, right?
That's correct. Yep.
So you came in here, found that job, and then when you found that job here, and not only you fell in love with the place, you saw, it's very different than Australia for sure. Fall in love with
Hmm.
that, the fast, how fast the city is, etc., the country, etc. Um, where did real estate come into play? Was that something that was always on your mind? I mean, I saw
Hmm.
some of your favorite books there. Is that something that you just stumbled upon, or is that something that you were always kind of thinking about as you were also an engineer?
So yeah, good question. So after that first time through New York, back at end of 2009, when I was just backpacking, I ended up back in Australia, and I'm back in a cubicle, and I am, just had 2 years abroad, 2008, 2009. Incredible time, backpacking around the world, experiencing all these incredible people and cultures, and I sailed across the Atlantic Ocean. Like I had these incredible life-changing stories, right? And here I am sitting in a cubicle, feeling like a very small cog in a big machine, right? And I said to myself, like, I've got to do more with my life. This is not what I signed up for. I enjoyed studying engineering, but I didn't, being that low level employee, I was like, man, I want someone to pay me to live my life and go traveling. So
Yeah.
that's when I stumbled upon the book Rich Dad Poor Dad. I didn't even know what the word entrepreneurship meant. I didn't even know at the time that I was going to invest in real estate. It really was more through reading the book Rich Dad Poor Dad in 2010 that it opened my eyes to cash flow. It opened my eyes to entrepreneurship. It opened my eyes to using my money to getting it working for me, right?
Mm.
And then I had the sort of self-awareness to say, well, I'm in engineering. I can build stuff. My dad, he was a teacher. He had a bit of luck, or not luck, I would say. He did quite well for a middle income type of guy in real estate. I'm going to give real estate a crack because that's just,
Mm.
I'm just going to give it a crack. So in Australia, I actually started the journey. I started learning about fixing and flipping and lease options and very similar stuff you can do here in the States. But I was going to a very small meetup event in Australia in 2010, 2011. I'd been bitten by the bug and I was just trying to consume as much as I could. I was still working full time. I was always been working full time, but saving money. And then at the end of 2011, I'd saved a bunch of money. I was going to do a deal in Australia, buy a whatever it is, we call them splitter blocks in Australia, which is like an ADU. If you get a large lot, you can split it in two and
Yeah. Right.
build two houses and blah, blah, blah. But I was like, you know what? I really want to live in America. I want to move to the United States. Screw it. Let's go. I'm going to chase this girl. And I spent probably half of my savings moving halfway across the world. But that was the start of it. And then when I first came to the US, I was fresh off the boat. Within like 2 weeks, I was I was in the Big Apple, trying to find a place. What was it? They call it a broker, I think it is, to try and find
Yeah.
you a rental, and you have to pay all this goddamn money to get first, last month, second month's deposit.
Yeah.
You've got 3 months in advance. You're like,
Security.
yeah, it was like $10,000 just to get into
Oh my
a
god.
goddamn one-bedroom apartment in New York City.
Oh man.
And I'm moving in with this girl. I hadn't got a job yet. But within 2 weeks of being fresh off the boat, as I said, I was at a New York RIA, the New York Real Estate Investment Association. I still remember it to this day. Pennsylvania Hotel above Penn Station. And I was blown away with the level of networking that was involved compared to where I come from. Like I'd come from a 15-person room. I'm now in a room full
Mm.
of 300 people, and I'm paying $30 at the door. There's just a wealth of knowledge, and I'm just consuming it as much as I could. I just thought to myself, I'm trying to find a job. At least I'm at a networking event. Maybe I can find a job through here. Maybe I don't, but I'm learning about the American way of investing. And then
Mm.
I quickly stumbled upon the fact that you have these secondary and tertiary markets that are very cheap to invest in, like stupidly cheap. You wouldn't find any properties in Australia like that. The Australian market is like Boston, it's like New York, it's like LA, it's like San Francisco, very high appreciation, no cash flow. because the barriers to entry is so high. But then you got all these secondary, tertiary markets that you can go and buy properties for like $50,000. And I was like, yeah, sign me up. And that was the start of it. So a long-winded answer, but that.
Yeah, no, I'm so glad you went there, Reed, because you know, the asset class of real estate, and there's so many different tiers in America. You don't talk about the Southeast, you talk about the West, Northeast. There's so many different products. Even multifamily, which we're going to get into, is something that when I look at the math, even in Canada, you don't even have this kind of product that in mass is the way you have it here in the US. I don't know if it's this,
Nope.
you know, and maybe it is only the US that has this many. I'm sorry, what was that?
So I thought you were going to say Australia, but yeah, the US is the only one that has garden style apartments like you do on scale here. Yeah,
right. You don't have this kind of product. So for you, I was going to be very curious as to, okay, you're in New York. That is not the place, right? Like I even rent in New York and I invest in Atlanta, right? And I was just telling this to you. So I'm so glad that you went there. When you discovered these markets, right? You know, now we're talking about, you know, you came overseas, right, to New York. So for you, investing out of state is, you know, some light. It's no big deal, right?
It's nothing,
even though most people still have some of the friction. So what was the next kind of step for you when you're like, okay, I'm in New York here. I just paid $10,000 or somewhat odd dollars to be here. Now I'm looking at tertiary markets that are outside of New York State. What's next?
Well, it actually wasn't outside New York State. I ended up finding, you know, just for me, I had a little bit of money saved. I had about $30,000 or $40,000 saved. Yeah. And I was like, well, you know, at this point, I was probably 2.5 years into my self-education. I remember being on the subway train to my eventual job. And I'm fast forwarding a little bit because over the next 6 months, I had to learn about the investing lingo here. I had to learn about cap rates. I had to learn what the hell a credit score was. I had no idea what a credit score was. I had to learn what an LLC was. All this stuff that being a foreigner, you just don't know. And through the learning curve, I started to develop these interests with people at these REIR events saying, okay, these are other markets. And, you know, someone had said, draw a line or draw a circle 4 hours radius from where you live, and hopefully you can find somewhere affordable to invest in. So you can get to it. You know, you can check out the market. And for me, it happened to be Syracuse, New York. Nothing special.
Oh, no kidding.
But I was able to get on a Greyhound bus on a Saturday morning. It'd take 4 hours to drive up there. I would look at some properties. The broker would literally come and pick me up from the bus station. And I would get on the bus, I'd get a Subway sandwich, get back on the bus, be back in New York City for a couple of beers with the guys, all in one day. And that was the start of it. So it was just something that I could afford. I think there was another gentleman at the REIR who had been starting investing up there. So I sort of took his lead and, okay, he knows a few people. Let's start scratching that surface. And ultimately I ended up buying a couple of properties up there. And, you know, I got started because, but I will say, it's all that sounds all very rosy and cherry and beauty, you know, rose tinted glasses. But it was a very not brutal. It was a very eye-opening experience for a fresh-faced, bushy-eyed tailed Australian to start buying Section 8 housing. And I had my issues with my first property. And for those people out there who, you know, some of your listeners who are getting started, they fear that. They fear the going out of state. They fear it's not down the road, I can't drive past it. But for me, I was never going to learn about doing something or buying a property through reading it in a book. I'd done all the education. I needed to go out and take action. And the thing is, I was never going to get to deal number 10 without doing deal number 1, regardless of what happened to it. So that first deal actually was great. I bought it for, I think it was $39,000. I put $10,000 into it. It was going really well for 6 months. Then I had a drive-by shooting. had to evict some of the tenants. I ended up selling that property about a year later, but it got me into deal number 2. And that deal number 2 got me into deal number 3. And that was the start of the process. And it wasn't a home run, but it was a base hit. I didn't lose my money. It was my money to be lost if something went wrong. And it was a risk that I was willing to take because, again, I wouldn't get off the starting blocks if I didn't do that first deal. I wouldn't be now doing the deals I'm doing today without doing that first deal.
Do you think, when I hear that, Reed, do you think it even matters, like in retrospect, how good that first deal is? Because I think perhaps maybe people want it to be perfect. And I'm just curious, maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think it matters?
Life isn't perfect. That's the thing. Life is going to throw you a curveball. And as long as you are educated about what you want to do, you've assessed the risks. Like for me, for example, moving halfway across the world, I was nervous as hell. I didn't have a job. I was chasing this girl, about to move in with her, had no idea it was going to work out. And I just kept telling myself the worst case scenario is I buy a plane ticket home and I get back into my engineering job and I'm surrounded by my friends and my family back in Australia. That's the worst case scenario, right? And that was such a big move. And so if that was the worst case scenario and that was the biggest, I got out of my comfort zone, well, then buying a property 4 hours away with my own money, with money that I wasn't betting because I did my due diligence. I got to the point of analysis paralysis, but I still can't control every outcome. I still can't control actions of my tenants. I still can't control certain things. And as long as I was comfortable with that, then I'm willing to take that step. And I think that's where people get stuck. They think about too many failures and those failures impede the vision of wanting where you could go. Because the other side of the coin is, I had that drive-by shooting. I had other issues with the property, but that property now has led to over 3,000 units in the portfolio today. So if I didn't do that first one, if I'd done nothing and I got too scared to do anything, I didn't get on the Greyhound bus, I didn't go to that RIA event, I wouldn't be sitting here today talking to you about it. So you can think about it two ways. And for those people out there, just understand things may go wrong that are outside your control. That's what investing is. It's taking risk. It's taking calculated risk, and you're going to do everything in your power because it's your money, it's your life savings, to make sure that you hedge your risk. But ultimately, it's still investing in anything is risky. Investing in the stock market is risky. Investing in minerals is risky. Investing in a business is risky. Everything has risk. You just have to learn how to manage that risk.
Yeah, and not investing is really risky.
And not investing is really risky, right? Doing nothing is risky. Because you stay where you are and you never get to grow.
See, Reed, now that I'm here and like in this stage in my life, and I sound like an old head, saying that now that I'm here, like I don't have any gray hairs or anything, but I'm just really reflecting, and I have a question I want to ask you as well that kind of came through a text, and I was like, ooh, that's a good question. I kind of think about this. Now that a lot of it I realize is mindset. I mean, in the businesses that I've been involved in, mindset over everything. Outlook, perspective, positivity, etc. For someone who's listening to this, who's usually getting in their own way, I have a coach who says, making millions is easy, getting out of your own way is harder, right? How do I get comfortable with discomfort? Like, at what point do I say, okay, I read this book, I read 3 books, I've analyzed deals. Like, that next leap, I think, is the one that creates the most momentum and probably the most important one. What would you say to someone? I think you already said it, but just to put it in a bow and wrap it up, what would you say to someone to encourage them to embrace the discomfort? So
you got to break it down into its parts. I'm very analytical, right? I'm all about, your mathematical equations. You break it down into its parts. That's, if anyone who's listening there, they might, who's a teacher, remember, geometry or trigonometry. You break things down into the most basic form it possibly can be, like fractions. So if you're wanting to go and buy a deal, right? You want to go buy your first investment property. What is the minimum effort required to get started? Okay, maybe the minimum effort is going to one meetup event, right? What's the next step to getting along that journey? Well, we've got to that first step. Let's get to step number 2. Maybe I need to meet people who are doing what I want to do. Okay, well, maybe I need to go to a second meetup. The third one might be, well, maybe I need to start understanding how to analyze deals because I don't know what a deal looks like. Well, maybe you need to go get some education on analyzing. And all of a sudden, you now have a pathway to get to that first deal. You start to lay the stepping stones. It's not about jumping to step 10. It's about literally just taking that first step. It might be listening to a podcast on how to analyze a single family house. It might be reading a book on how to find the best markets to invest in. That could be a first step, and that's a step in the right direction. Then as you start doing more steps, those steps become bigger and bigger and bigger. And all of a sudden, you look back and you think, wow, I've really pushed that boundary and I've got my first deal done. So it's about breaking into its steps and understanding what is still moving you forward to your goal, but that is still maybe not as scary as doing that first. That first deal sounds really scary, but maybe there's one step or two steps I can do now that don't sound as scary, which is I go to a meetup event. Oh, I read a book, or I join a mentor. I find a mentor or a mastermind, or I just try and I just pick up the phone and call a broker. Those little things, they're not that scary. It doesn't cost you anything. It just costs you courage. So that's the answer I would give to that one.
I like that, because as I'm listening to you, I'm hearing you kind of say, and this is how I'm interpreting it, and everyone's welcome to interpret it in their own way, but I'm really hearing you're changing your environment along the way, right? And whether your environment is always analyzing versus, okay, actually, writing the numbers, to actually meeting someone who's doing it, to actually, and then you start discovering a little bit more about your blind spot. And that, I think that's what I resonate with, that of changing your environment. I think everything then follows. That's my interpretation, though. I think you said it very well, Reed, but I want to transition a little bit to, so you go to 3,000 units, and sometimes we kind of just, okay, that sounds great. Okay, then you got to 3,000. Okay, there's obviously some middle parts, and obstacles, failures, etc. So, question I want to ask you is not going to be your quintessential, it's more like, okay, at what point did you feel that, oh wow, this is a momentum machine? Like, when did it hit you? Like fifth property, like a refinance, seventh, 10th, dozen? Like, do you remember?
If I'm being brutally honest, just recently I was selling a couple of deals, and some of these valuations are like valuations we're getting in year 3, and the valuation we were supposed to get in year 7, we're getting in year 3, and I'm like, I'm going to make how much money if we sell now? Like, and there's 5 deals. There's like 5 other deals that are like that I got. Like, what?
All right, don't get cute with us. We're in the lab here. Let's talk some numbers. Lay it all out. Well, this is a safe space. So let's put some context behind this. Yeah.
Well, I want to put some context in this, in the fact of the build, because I think, I couldn't have predicted that the properties that I own today are going to do as well as they're going to do, and I'm going to walk away with a lot of money. And there's no walking away, but there's also difference. Now I'm like, oh, I've got to worry about taxes. I've got a tax issue now. But I don't want to talk about that, because maybe not everyone on the show is at that stage yet. So, but to answer your question specifically, it constantly surprises me the wealth I've created, and that people do create through multifamily, through real estate investing. Everyone says it's a freaking, oh, you can create long-term wealth and blah, 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 blah. And I will say, I've been at this since 2009. I didn't quit my day job to 2018. So it took me a long period of time to get to that point where I could be in the business full-time, to get to that point where it was momentum shifting, to get to the point that I realized this is a big long-term game that I'm playing. And every step of the way, the example I give of selling these couple of deals recently is the most recent that comes to mind, that it sort of got me back there, that I'm like, wow, looking back at my projection, I was like, that's pretty freaking good. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, but let's talk about the steps, right? Like, so one of the big things I realized when I was building my business is, after doing a couple of deals in upstate New York, I transitioned then to Los Angeles. We moved to LA in 2014. And I quickly realized I was getting sick and tired of being an engineer. And I didn't want to, I constantly joke, like, I was on site at some pretty big projects in downtown Los Angeles. And trust me, everything's structurally safe, it's all good. But I was joking to the guys on site. I was like, I don't care how many bolts you put in that connection, but what are you going to rent the space for? I was trying to get in there, because I was surrounded with developers. I was surrounded by guys I wanted to be. I just happened to be a consultant. And so then I quickly realized, I was like, hang on, I've got a skill set here. I've got a skill set that maybe I could be valuable to that guy over there, who owns the building. Like, he's not an engineer, but I could be a good team member. I need to keep being employed here in the United States I wasn't married at the time. Like, I still needed I didn't have a green card. I needed the visa still to stay here. So then I reached out to all the development companies that I happened to be, that my firm, the structural engineering firm, was consulting for. And I said, hey, I'm a project engineer. I'm, blah, blah, blah. I want to transition into real estate full time. I'm doing a little bit on the side. I'd love to work for you. And I actually got a lot of responses back. And they essentially created a job for me. And the company I ended up working for, Ensemble Real Estate Investments in Long Beach, the guy who employed me, his wife happened to be Australian. And his wife happened to be Australian. And I happened to be Australian with American girl. So it was all very kismet, but there was no job there. There was no advertising on Indeed.com. There was none of that. Like, I was going out and creating the opportunities for myself. But what the lesson here for people listening, if they're catching on to it, is I also realized I had a skill set. Now, not everyone has a structural engineering skill set. I understand that. But everyone is standing on a mountain of value, and you can use that as a stepping stone, again, back to the stepping stone, to pivot into a job, a career that you can get paid a lot of money for, or keep the lights on, but still get to learn along the way. And that transition in my mindset, because I was very, very overworked. I don't want to swear, but F this structural engineering job, man, like, screw this. But as soon as that light went off in my head, I was like, actually, you could use this to, ask for a job with those guys over there. Then I was like, oh, okay. Like, I then started to enjoy my job more, because I knew it was going to be that stepping stone where I needed to go. And that was really, really critical.
See, what I love what you're saying, Reed, is it's something that I always talk about is I think sometimes we need to reframe the way we think about professions, degrees. Even I think sometimes they're pigeonholed. This is what you do.
Yep.
And rather, when I'm hiring, I look at, okay, is this a transferable skill set?
Correct.
Right. That's what it is. And I think a lot of us, or I don't want to say a lot of us, but some folks, some individuals, don't realize how much value they can bring to that, which will bring them in closer proximity to where they're trying to get to. And it doesn't matter and you'd be so surprised if you're younger, that might be social media. Right. It might be technology. It might be, there's so much value that you can bring. It doesn't matter how much money or what level some person's at. There's a gap in their world that you can fill. Mm-hmm. And what I love how you bring it together, Reed, is you didn't apply for it. You sought it out, right? You had to go get it, and you create it. And what I loved about what you said, because I'm like, this is what I do for a living. I just reach out to people, right? Like, you and I maybe have no business being in the same lab together, but reaching out, fostering that relationship. That's what I've done over and over again. And 90% of the time, or maybe that's not accurate, maybe it's not 90, but a good chunk of the time, people do respond. And sometimes it's because they see a little bit of themselves in you, because it takes a certain amount of people to have that courage to even do it. So you've already separated yourself from the pack. So there was so much to unpack there that I just had to extract it, because I just think there's so many gems in there that you left. Is offer value, reach out, see how you can be an asset and get in proximity to where you're trying to go. And now you literally created this avenue, you got closer. So tell us about that experience. Oh, now that was it Beach? Is it the Beach? I saw up front. Is it Beachfront LLC or something?
No,
is that what it was? Or that was different?
It was Beach City Capitals is a different deal that I'm a part of. But it was called Ensemble Investments in Long Beach, California, and it was again being surrounded by. I'd done one syndication as a co-GP prior to moving to that company. Over the next 4 years, I didn't end up I did a couple other small syndications on the side, like co-GPing. But by the time I left that job, I'd done leading 4 syndications.
That's amazing.
So there was a lot of autonomy. There was a lot of time where I could do my job well, but then I had some flexibility. I got to see how the big dogs do it. Like you wouldn't even know who my boss was. He owns half of Beverly Hills. He's an immigrant himself. He's from Iran. You don't even know. He's got a company that's worth over $1 billion. And him and his business partners had a story starting out from university and starting this company and yada, yada, yada back in the 80s. That was like, hell yeah, I want to join this company. Ultimately, I've got my own wings and I flew away. But that was such an incredible experience to see how the big guys do it. And at the end of the day, it was all about critical thinking. I was already being very I would critically analyze things just being a structural engineer, but it was people management and critical thinking, and how do I problem solve? And that was all about anything you do in any job. Is that they're the fundamentals, right? If you can think critically and you can problem solve and you can manage people, you can apply to pretty much any job in the world. I think, like insert job here. Now I happen to be building high-end multifamily units, right? With GCs and subs and the city and inspectors and the banks and all the things that go into it. And I was getting paid to learn. And then I was applying that, and I wasn't developing like what my boss was doing, but I was buying multifamily syndication on the side. So it gave me the confidence to be confident in my own skin. And I think that's really important for the listeners is that to your point earlier, we're all standing on a mountain of value. We just have to understand what that value is and then go surround yourself with people you aspire to be, because that's the other key takeaway, that I was now surrounded by people who I wanted to be. Not that I knew that I wanted to be a developer, but even the job scene that I was in was just, it blew my mind away about how much I took away from that company and what they gave to me in terms of my growth and my opportunities. So I'm very, very thankful for that opportunity.
What I also love about that is, and by the way, when I say, I love how you said insert job here. that's literally true. It's applicable. Like, I always talk about, I see this a lot because, we have a team of over 15, in our agency, and I look at customer service sometimes like, man, all that could have been solved there is just critical thinking to help the customer out. Like, that's incredible. You've already set yourself apart. So I actually do believe there's tons of opportunities of just being able to use our noggin a little bit. But, I love what you said about I want to ask about the working in proximity to the people you're trying to be like also gives you a window to identify, oh, this is not what I thought it would be, or this is what I thought it would be. And sometimes we don't always get that in a book. I think it's important when we talk about the lab experimenting, the whole point is to experiment, a lot of experiments, so you can actually get a taste and then double down on what works. For you, I'm curious, and I want to, there's a few things I want to highlight because you said a lot of good things. But I'm curious, as you were watching the big players, what was a key takeaway that you're like, ooh, I didn't read that in the book. Like, is there anything that stuck out at you? I'm sure there's tons.
So much.
But is there anything that a few things that jumped out at you were like, ooh, he looks into everybody's eyes? Or is it he calls back everybody? Like, is there something, or he or she, or that you saw that was like pretty like, ooh, you can't coach that, right? Or you can't read about it. Anything?
I think the biggest thing is, so one of the partners, Michael Moskowitz, who was one of the owners who employed me, who had the Australian wife. And I remember Michael, I think he was in his late 50s, but he would always come into a room and within 30 seconds to a minute, pretty much has the issue identified in his mind and knows how to break it down into its pieces, into its most simple pieces, like that, keep it simple, stupid. And has been able to draw upon a bit of legal knowledge, a bit of banking knowledge, a bit of construction knowledge, a bit of finance, a bit of equity, and dealing with investors. And back at the end of the day, it's all about problem solving, and then be able to come up with a solution and be that sounding board to the group that we might all be in a group setting. And he'd come in and give his 2 cents, would be very, very valuable. But he was never an expert on any area. He just knew how to break it down, the problem really well, and then be able to communicate that effectively based on his experience over the years. And I think that was quite eye-opening. And he's running obviously a very, very large company. And to me, that was, you do have to learn all the skill sets. You do have to, and it goes back to my saying before, I was down and dirty on being a structural engineer at one point. But then when I changed my mindset about, well, hang on, this is giving me a bunch of skills that I'm going to be able to transfer and learn even more skills, then it changed my mindset again, right? And looking at Michael, he epitomized that to the nth degree.
Can I piggyback that thought for a second? I want to ask you, what are your thoughts? This is kind of maybe a misconception that's out there. Would you rather have broad horizontal knowledge, or do you think, now we talk about being of value, be super, super niche that you're like, oh, we got to have this guy on our team? Like, what are your thoughts on that? If you're going to pick
I think
version 1 versus version 2, like what would you pick going into battle?
Well, I would not do anything different. So coming out of university, I was that guy who's like, I studied structural engineering, so I must be a structural engineer. Like I was pigeonholing myself, right? And through that pigeonholing, that opened doors. But then through my curiosity, I was able to learn other skill sets. And being curious is really, really, really important. Don't forget about it. So I'd say, yes, being an inch wide and a mile deep on a skill set in your early days will help you open some doors to be around people that you can plug their hole, like you mentioned earlier. But then being curious, hey, what's I might be, you might be whatever it was. I remember I was asking about the financing team about how to underwrite deals more effectively. And I was like, can I have a look at some of your spreadsheets? Because I was quite handy on a spreadsheet. Just, I'm good at math and building out shear diagrams for structural engineering. And I was like, well, a cash flow model can't be that difficult, right? It's, it's a P&L. And through looking at some of their stuff, I was able to quickly understand, or not quickly, but over a period of time, understand, okay, what makes a good deal and what does make a good deal. And that there is a great example of, I was not skillful in it, but I was curious enough in it to become skillful in that particular topic. Now my underwriting is really, really great. And I've developed my own, intellectual property that I use in my day-to-day business from asking questions in a former workplace environment.
That was really, really good, and a really good answer. And I need to paraphrase it. What I heard is get really good at one skill to pry open the door. Once you're in the building, get very curious, right? So that skill set will help plug any holes for that specific person or company, right? It gets you in, and then stay very curious and get very broad in your knowledge. Wow, that's really good, man.
Yeah,
that's some good.
I just came up with it.
Drop the mic. We're done. Wait, this is good that you brought that full circle. Let me ask you real quick. Code GP. We don't hear, we've heard, I don't know that my Experiment Nation has heard Code GP often. I think we hear it here and there. What does that look like? Is that just, do you have to bring money to Code GP? Do you have to bring expertise, maybe labor, or hours of work?
So let me break it down to syndication, right? The best analogy I've ever described it as is, I'm coming from LA to Boston. I'm coming to see you. I'm coming to the lab, right? If I want to go hire a Boeing 747 because I need to get there in one shot, I don't want to have it, I don't want to be stopping all the time. Well, Boeing 747, a 200-seat plane, is going to cost me a lot of money by myself. But if I go share that cost with other people, then I'm going to be able to, we can all benefit in getting from point A to point B. We can all come to the lab, right? We can all come say good day. But in that analogy, there's a captain and co-pilot who's flying the plane. And that's, in the beginning, that might be someone else. That might be someone else who's found the deal or who owns the real estate business. But then there's first class. And in that first class is the other GPs where I, in the beginning, where I would sit, where I would raise money or I'd underwrite or I'd asset manage or find the deal or bring in banking relations, whatever it might be. There is first class. And that's your GP. And then there's everyone on the back who's all your investors who are enjoying the in-flight entertainment. They couldn't afford the plane by themselves either, but they've been able to buy a seat and they've been able to enjoy and get their money working for them. So in general, yes, co-GP in the beginning, I had a seat in first class. Now I'm flying the plane. I'm the pilot, and I've been the pilot for the last 6 or 7 years. So that is the best analogy I've ever been able to describe.
That's really good. You got a brand. Is that licensed? My goodness.
Now it is. I'm on record. Reed Goossens, November 2nd.
He's got it. That's yours. Let me get some royalties on that, Mr. Cashman. Listen, that's a really good analogy. So you come to the lab before you were, first class. Now you're the pilot. And fast forward, we talk about you bringing a skill set, you learning. What I love about this is, and I had Tony Watley in the lab. Shout out to Tony Watley. That's the side hustle millionaire, because I think more people need to pay attention to that. I'm not sure if you know who Tony Watley is, but he's an engineer. Maybe I should make an introduction.
You should.
He's an engineer, build a side business, which was a multi-million-dollar business.
Wow. And
we don't talk about this enough, of how to leverage the skill sets of the 9-to-5. That's what I did, right? From my IT background, I use an agile model in my agency, right? That's how we're able to just, pump out tons of work and keep our clients happy. But I took that skill set in. You were, it's actually really remarkable because you were able to pivot your entire skill set and then on the side start doing some of your own deals, if I got that correct, right?
That's correct. Yep.
Gosh, so good. So you're leveraging your education, you're leveraging your career, your skill set, and then obviously fast forward and people will look at it, oh wow, like, he's such a, lucky. No. There's no luck here. You put in that work. You put in that work and you built a strong foundation with what the cards you were dealt. And I think all of us can do that based on what we just said about the value that we can just identify in ourselves, or if we don't have it, get the value so that you can offer it to somebody to then start building that empire.
That's right. And I will say there is some luck with everything. You can't build anything. You can't build stuff without some luck, but there's a ton of hard work in there. There's a lot of sleepless nights. There's a lot of, I've been there working 9 to 5, trying to keep a relationship going, trying to keep fit and keep healthy, have a social life, and trying to start a business. It is tough. And until I was able to quit my job in 2017, 2018, I was burnt out at that stage, just trying to, a lot of plates in the air. So
how did that look like? I'm sorry for those people. Go ahead, wrap it up.
Yeah, so for those people out there who are listening, I sympathize with you. Like I've been there. We've all been there. Starting a business is tough. It's about again, back to mindset. If you think your business is going to take off within 3 to 6 months, or even maybe if it's even a year and it doesn't, don't get discouraged. This is a journey that's going to take a long time. Like, as I mentioned earlier, I picked up the book Richard put out in 2010. I quit my job 8 years later, 8 years later. That's how long it took. So if you're looking to quit your job, if you're looking to get out from your 9 to 5, if you have the mindset that it will take 10 years or 9 years, then you're going to go and approach it a little differently than if you think it's going to take 12 months. So that's I like that. Yeah.
I that's a good alley-oop you're lobbing my way here. So, because I was going to ask you, in retrospect, right? Things take time. So I don't want this to not be something that, we digest as we're, wrapping it up here. Is this takes time. Anything worth takes time. Now, what could have helped you get to your goal or where you're at today faster in retrospect? Or is there some things and I don't want to say because there's some things that have occurred that needed to happen. It's hindsight 2020. I typically don't like to ask the question, what would you have done differently? Because if you do that, it changes a lot of the trajectory of where you are today. So I don't think that's what I'm asking, but I think with the knowledge that you have today in a lab with us, if you look back and you're like, not necessarily would have done something differently, but maybe implemented something a little earlier on, what would that have been to expedite that process? And remember, I am saying, I know it takes time. I'm not saying there's a shortcut, but I'm saying with the knowledge that you have now, is there something that you think looking back could have been more effective that could help our audience as you look back?
Yeah, look, it's a hard one to answer because I'm 35 years of age. I built this company in 10. I had no idea when I moved to the United States when I was at 26, that I'd be sitting here talking to you about all this. No idea. So as Tony Robbins says, you overestimate what you can achieve in a year, but you underestimate what you can achieve in a decade. And that gives me goosebumps thinking about it because I'm so grateful that I started when I started. I am just 35. I've got another 45 years of living, right? I've
so good. Good.
Like in 10 years time, I don't even know what I'll be doing, but I'll know it'll be freaking awesome because I enjoyed the last 10 years, so there's that type of thing. But I think if I'm truly being honest, like part of being an entrepreneur is that, and the detail guy that I am, I probably haven't let go of enough I probably maybe would have run a little quicker with the portfolio if I'd let go a little quicker. But in saying that, I've kept it lean and I didn't need to bring on people because I could do it because I am young. You know what I mean? Like I'm getting to the point now where I need to fire myself. I've got up here, replace myself on my board behind you, behind me. But that would probably be the only thing looking back. Not that it's a bad thing. It's just, but again, it's all high. Success is whatever you define it as. So, and as long as you are malleable and you're riding the wave of change as it comes down the road, don't be set in your ways and continue to be curious and learn, then I think as entrepreneurs, we all will continue to grow. And that's the beauty of it, that it becomes part of your DNA. It becomes who you are. It becomes a life goal and lessons, and it's a life journey. So enjoy that journey along the way. Don't always be thinking about, what's going to happen once I get to this goal. Enjoy it.
Yeah. That's something I really recently reflected, Reed, and I want to echo this. I think I was on another podcast talking about this, but I really wanted to echo with it because I was at a conference in Orlando, and it ties in with what you just said. We're in a room of overachievers, and the person speaking, I can't remember if it was Russell Brunson who was on the stage. It was his event, and he said, how many of you are thinking right now of what you don't have? And I was like, oh yeah. Like I'm goal oriented. I'm always thinking and then you really forget that, well, the present was once your future that you're not appreciating in the present, which is like, oh, golly. I'm like, damn, let's think about that. That's kind of crazy. And I think, having that balance of, this is one of my favorite phrases of being, grateful for everything, but unsatisfied, right? So if you can have that balance of being very grateful in the moment of everything that you have and where you're at and the progress that you've made, and still yet be unsatisfied, I think that's maybe a healthy balance. And maybe that's a healthy balance for me. I think you should, what are your thoughts?
I'm going to replace it unsatisfied with curious, because unsatisfied means means dissatisfaction, right? It doesn't mean, so if you're curious, if you continue to be curious, your mind will always look to wanting to grow. So it will, and how you tame that curiosity, because we're always overachievers, like, oh gosh, I'm angry at myself that I'm not here, but to your point, that's why I love doing podcasts, because I get to reflect on some of the journey where I've come from. And I remind myself every time I come off here that I am very freaking lucky to be where I'm at. I'm so grateful. And if you don't enjoy the journey, life is goddamn short. I've had personal, people have died in my life personally along my journey to this financial freedom. And if you don't enjoy it along the way, there's always going to be another mountaintop to scale. There's always going to be something else to go and achieve. But sometimes you've got to turn around and smell the roses. And but continue to be curious, because that curiosity will help you propel you forward into what you want to be, into being your fulfilled self, into being, achieving that unfulfilled potential. And for me, that's all I'm driven by, being the most fulfilled person I can be in my life over the time that I've been given. So, yeah.
What are some of the, what's a question that you typically ask? Is it this is as simple as, how does this work, or why do you do this? Do you have a go-to? I know you have, How to Win Friends and Influence People as one of your favorite books, but what is there like a go-to thing that you go to that helps you go a little bit deeper?
I think I've always been quite good at observing. I think you have to shut up and observe sometimes, and observe others. And through the podcast, through my podcast, talking with a lot of people, through reading books, through observing other entrepreneurs, you pick up little tidbits. And it isn't rocket science what we're building here. It's about, like, one of the big things gives me jazz about building businesses is the ecosystem, right? And in multifamily, you've got the buying side of it, but then you've got the property management, then you've got the construction management, then you've got sourcing product from China, then you've got equity raising. There's all these different businesses that you can maybe control all of it, but maybe you have a piece of it, right? There's technology businesses in the syndication world. Like, it is so many things that inspire you that for me, it's like, it's actually this, when you see the big companies, like, the big entrepreneurs, they have everything vertically integrated, because that makes them even more wealth. And it's not all about wealth, but it's all about those things that make it more efficient. And as an engineer, that word efficiency just comes and is like, that's so
natural. Thank God.
It works so well, so yeah.
Absolutely. So let me go to the rapid fire question, because I think you did such a good job of bringing it together for us, and Reed, and I can't thank you enough for it. So, I think I saw on your bio there, that you had, rich. Well, you talk about rich dad, poor dad. You talk about how to win friends and influence people. You can't pick 10x. What is, a book
Another
right now
book.
that's flying under the radar? That you would really be like, ooh, this is a good one that's not often talked about. Is there something that
Yeah,
comes to
I've,
mind?
I've got a good one for you. He's an Australian author. His name's Dan
Mhm.
Priestley. I've had him on my show. Actually, you should definitely review the show. It's called Key Person of Influence. And it's how to raise your profile within any industry and be that key person of influence. Because once you are that key person of influence in your industry, whether it be a dentist or real estate or selling a widget, people are going to come to you as a thought leader. And that's how you grow your business. We as human beings, Reed Goossens, am a business. People invest in me first and foremost. Now, if I don't have a podcast, if I don't have a book, if I don't have that thought leadership platform, I can't be seen in their eyes as trustworthy, and thus they can't trust me with their money. So Dan talks a lot about creating that key person of influence status in whatever the field you're in. So really, really important book. Definitely check it
I
out.
love that. Does he talk about really narrowing down as well on the avatar?
He does.
Or
He does talk
yeah.
about that. He talks about pitching. He talks about a wealth of. It's been a couple of years now since I've read it, but he talks a lot about just being. How do you position yourself as that key person of influence in your sphere? And if I look back at my journey, when I started my podcast, I didn't know what a freaking podcast was or what I was doing. I think my mum and my grandma were the only one listening to it. But now, 6 years later, over 300 episodes, it's helped build a platform to talk about what I want to talk about, and it's brought me into that KPI status. So it's very, very powerful. Definitely check it out. Dan Priestley, I'm sure it's on Amazon or wherever. I'm sure he even gives you out a free book, I think, even if I remember back in the day. So yeah.
Love that. Love that. What's the core rapid fire questions here? What's the best habit that serves you every day? Reed.
Meditation.
Mm.
Has to be meditation.
Best, your favorite application to use?
Favorite application right now would be Slack. I think Slack's a pretty good one. Yep.
Absolutely. All right, ready? One
Mhm.
300 unit apartment or 3 apartments of 100 units. Which one do you pick?
300 unit apartment.
Or
I think
three?
three 100 unit apartments.
Why?
Why? Because I get diversification if it's in different MSAs.
Ooh, I like how you think. All right,
That's if, or even within the one MSA, you could have 3, scattered around the city. So
Yeah, sure. No, you got it. Class A, Class C.
Class A,
Ooh, interesting.
100% all day
Cash,
long.
cash flow or equity?
Meaning equity growth, or is that what you mean?
Which one do you pick? Cash flow or equity? Which one just speaks to you? Or equity?
Of course, cash flow is king. But in this business of syndication, it's all about my back end as a syndicator, as a lead syndicator. I get paid when the deal sells. So, my cash flow goes to all of my investors to keep them happy. And I'm slowly building my nest egg myself. So one day I'll get there.
That's awesome. Self-manage or outsource?
I outsource now, but would like to self-manage in the future.
Vertical integration you were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
If you had one superpower in the real estate syndication world that you are, could be anything, could be reading the mind of the person across from you. It could be just, what would that superpower be that you'd want to develop or that you're currently developing right now?
I honestly think last year in 2020 was 2009, 2008 again. And I should have been buying more. That's what I wish.
Mm-hmm.
I wish I had the hindsight to go and buy more, because now look where we are. So I think that would be the biggest superpower. But, we're still doing just
forecasting.
Forecasting,
in other words.
exactly. Yes.
I got you. If you could describe a successful investor or syndicator in one word, what word comes to mind first?
Resilient.
I like that. This last one is very, very real. It just came to me as a text from on somebody's community, and I was really reflecting on this. So I was like, let me ask this to Reed when I get him here. You meet yourself 18 years. You meet your 18-year-old self, and you can only say 3 words. What are those 3 words?
Continue It's more between 4. Continue to have fun.
Ooh. Well, we'll squeeze in the 4. That's worth it. I like it. It's my lab. I got you. Damn, I like that. Continue to have. I think you tied that well together with based on. Yeah, I like how you corrected me on the unsatisfied. Be curious, grateful, and curiosity. I like that. Okay, I like that. I really you talked about this. This is a section brought to you by Invested Talent. I couldn't let the serendipity go to waste, my man. Listen, you talked about thought leadership platform. How important, right? Being a key person of influence, how important has your podcast platform or your social media platform meant for your business?
The podcast has opened up doors. I don't make any money off my podcast, but it has opened so many doors to people who I aspire to be. It's actually like a mentor to me because I get to talk to other people who maybe be ahead of me. I get to be on a conversation on the same wavelength as someone else, and that gives me juices. You know, my wife she's always like, "Did you just take some drugs in there or something? Because you're coming out bouncing off the wall." And it's like, "No, I just had a really awesome conversation with someone." The podcast it's opened so many freaking doors for me. It's obviously created the books, it's created audio books, it's created just investors. I can't even put a return on investment on what it's given me, but it's been, I can't even measure it. That's how powerful it's been.
Yeah, and just to put it into perspective, because I know we're at 150 plus episodes, and I probably double that. You're at 300 plus, 400. Yep. Is that where you're
been
at?
Doing one a week for the last 6 years.
So how many episodes is that? Just to put into perspective.
That's over 300. So 50 episodes a year for the last 6 years.
Let that sink in, y'all. Experiment deep. Listen, Reed, you've been stellar here. I want to definitely make sure that, Experiment Nation gets a chance to tap in again. You have Investing in the US podcast, and Invest in the US, right? If you're watching this, right over his right shoulder, Invest in the US is his most latest book. I believe 10,000 Miles to the American Dream was the previous book. Is that right?
Vice versa. But that's
vice versa. So you have a new one. So you got one with the black cover, 10,000 Miles to the American Dream. Definitely make sure I'm going to get my hands on it. And I'll put my word on that, and you guys will see it on my social media. Definitely always constantly learning. I think I learned tons from myself today. And I think it's really important for us to really understand what it takes, the mindset that it takes, and the diligence that it takes. The way you've brought it together for us, Reed. I can't thank you enough, brother. Where else, though? Give you the plug. Where else, though, can Experiment Nation tune in a little bit more to find out what's going on? Because you are not, I was looking. I think you got to update your websites, brother. Your portfolio is growing. We can't even keep up. I know. By the time this drops, we might have to, Oh, let me ask you. This is a question I was going to ask you. I almost forgot. We talk about elevating all the time. What do you think is going to take you to get to $1 billion? You're already there. You're already there. You're on your way there. You're only 35. But what are you do you think how you do one thing is how you done everything, how you constantly do what you're doing. So is there anything that you think is okay? Now you talked about removing yourself. What does that look like for you? That way we can say we heard it here first, November 3rd, when we're in the lab. And he said he was going to do it. I like this, man. He says what he's going to do. So what do you think that's going to look like for you to get to that?
Wow.
Maybe you don't want to get there. Maybe you do want to get there. It doesn't really matter. That's none of my business, but to that next level.
Yeah, I think for me, the billion is just a number, right? Like as I'm 35 and already halfway there. I know I'm going to keep doing this till I'm dead. I think I'm going to way surpass $1 billion in terms of real estate under management.
Oh, I know that. I didn't want to put too much.
I think the big thing for me is, I want to challenge myself to do more, right? With the business, with other aspects within the business. I do want to be that proper CEO. I want to do some deals back in Australia. I want to do there's real estate all over the world, my friend. There's deals to be had, and raising a fund, doing deals in Australia, doing deals back here. I don't have a number where it's going to go. Back to what I was saying before, the last 10 years have been freaking incredible. The next 10 years, when I'm 45, I'll come back on the show and we'll talk about what's happened. And I'm sure I'll have outstripped it because I've outstripped everything, not as a boast, but I've outstripped everything that I set out to achieve right now. So the rest is gravy, and I've just got to enjoy that time. I've got to enjoy the journey. I can't sit back on my laurels because there's stuff I want to challenge myself to go do on a personal branding level, on a thought leadership level. But in general, I know I'm easily going to be able to surpass 1 billion. And it's just, I've got some pretty big goals in the back pocket over the next couple of years that I want to unleash. So yeah.
Well, I can tell you right now, I have no doubt that you will be able to surpass that and continuously have an impact. Like you said, it is just a number. I see yourself as, it's just remarkable. I definitely want to give you kudos on the air because, what you're doing is remarkable. And I want to extend that invite. You said 10 years from now, I'll be 40, you'll be 45. Let's make that happen.
Let's do it.
The new 40s. We'll have you back to the lab because I'm certainly not going anywhere, and you are certainly not going anywhere, and you're going deep, and you're staying curious at the same time. So love. I want to plug you as well. What is the website? Is it reedgoossens.com?
Yeah, reedgoossens.com. That's reedgoossens.com. I'm very active on Instagram. So hit me up on Instagram or on LinkedIn. And then also, if you're ever coming through LA and you want to meet up for a coffee or a beer, you can hit me up at info@reedgoossens.com. Just let me know when you're coming through town, and we'll get something on the schedule.
Love it. And just like that, ladies and gentlemen, we are out.